Am I also gonna die soon? Like, what is happening? Hi guys! So, although this is a very serious topic, I didn't want this to be an extremely heavy and serious video because I know that when we first hear about multiple sclerosis, that's the first kind of feelings that come to mind: fear, seriousness, doubt, and I just wanted to give a more positive note for maybe someone who has been diagnosed or someone who has a friend or a family member who has a diagnosis. So maybe this video can give you a little hug to your heart and try to give you a bit more hope and understanding of what this is. I know when I first heard about it from, my diagnosis, I was feeling really desperate and really scared. And I wish I had someone beside me to maybe alleviate some of my fear or maybe to give me courage. But I also want to make it very clear that I'm not a doctor, I'm not a neurologist, so I'm not here to give you advice. I'm just here to share a bit of my story, and that maybe through listening to my story, you can know that you're not alone. There are millions of people going through this as well. That doesn't make it less important what you're going through. It's just so you know that you don't have to be isolated. There are other people here to give you support. About a year ago, I started feeling a lot of numbness, and I know this is a very common symptom for a lot of people who have the diagnosis. I started feeling a lot of numbness on the right side of my body, so basically my right arm and my right leg. It's a different feeling and it's very difficult to explain because it's almost like you feel a bit of like this pins and needles, I would say, in a different way. And I had this symptom for about 2 weeks. I used to feel this after going to the gym, and I wasn't able to really sleep at night because the right side of my body would feel very restless. 2 weeks later, the sensation just wasn't going away, so I decided to go to the doctor. So at the time I was living in Munich in Germany, and I don't really speak German, so I had to find like an English speaking doctor, which thankfully I found. And thankfully he was really good because as soon as I described my symptoms, he told me to go to a neurologist right away. I've heard of cases of people who actually had those symptoms and general doctor didn't refer them to a neurologist until maybe after a year. So I was very lucky that my doctor was able to identify that symptom as a neurological condition and refer me to a neurologist right away. So I also found a neurologist who spoke English, thankfully. But what she told me basically at that time is that I just needed to do an MRI scan to get more information. 2 weeks ago I was with a numbness in my arm, and then now I'm doing an MRI, and I was just very confused. I'm very healthy, I exercise, I eat well, so I didn't think anything of it. I did get an MRI about a week and a half later. I had never gotten an MRI in my life before. It's extremely loud and it's very uncomfortable because you have to like lay still for half an hour. And sometimes they do an MRI with contrast, which means they would inject, a liquid in your vein to kind of get the contrast in your brain. And I'm not an expert, I'm not sure, but I was like laying there, in a different country, in a language I don't understand, but it was all good. And then I was sitting there, and they told me to sit in the waiting room, and that's when things started to get a little bit scary. I just finished a half an hour MRI where I was like half naked in front of a bunch of doctors looking through my brain, and I thought, I'm fine. And then about, I would say 20 minutes later, I was just kind of anxiously waiting to know what's going on. An older doctor kind of invited me to come into his office and have a talk, and he looked very serious. And then when a doctor gives you a serious look, you just you kind of get that vibe from him, and you start to become really scared yourself because what do I have inside my head? And then he basically told me that they found scars in my brain. So I had about 20 lesions in my brain, and I was just sitting there like, wait, you're just telling me I have 20 lesions in my brain? Like, what is going on? Like, I'm fine. I just had a bit of numbness, and I just started freaking out at that moment because I didn't know if I should take that seriously. I just felt like he wasn't giving me information, like he knew something that he was keeping from me, and I was like, am I gonna die? Like, what is going on? And I think that's the scariest part, like when you don't have a lot of information, they just kind of give you a piece of information, they don't really explain to you what's going on. This can be very scary. I left, I rode my bike over there, so I just kind of left there with that scan, and then my heart was just racing so much, and I was riding that bike, and I had a million thoughts through my head, like, what does this even mean? So I think out of everything, this was one of the scariest parts of it. So I tried to calm myself down, and a week after I had another appointment to go see the doctor, and she basically confirmed one of my worst fears. She's like, yeah, well, looking at this, it looks like it could be multiple sclerosis. At that point I was already pretty terrified, and I was trying to keep everything for myself because I didn't want to scare any of my family members. I only told my husband, who tends to have, his emotions pretty put together, so he was very helpful in that time. So the main thing was that the lesions were all on the left hemisphere of my brain, and they ended up being compatible with the right side, which was numb. So, but just to be sure, they had to do a couple of other examinations. So I had to do some other blood tests. I also had to take the fluid from my spinal cord, and I think this was one of the hardest exams I had to do in my life. It's not that bad, but it's just, the thought of taking fluid from your spinal cord is not exactly pleasant, and I was really scared of doing that examination. Thankfully, I had a really, really good doctor. So I actually went to do taking the fluid. I forgot what the exam is called, but I went to take the fluid out of my spinal cord the first time. And as he was, trying to poke the needle, you kind of have to, curve and, lay to the front while the doctor is on your back with the pretty big needle trying to take the fluid out. And the first time he was doing that, I got this kind of like electric shock in my leg and my arm. So he decided to stop and say, okay, why don't we do a scan of your spinal cord first, so we can see where you have a bit more space between the nerves. That was actually a very, very helpful thing. The place he was trying to go through in my spinal cord with the needle was, very tight. So he went 2 vertebrae or 1 vertebra up, and there was a bit more space there, so he could actually go through way easier without, touching any nerves. And then he were able to extract the fluid from my spinal cord and run some tests. And they were basically looking to see if there was any virus or bacterial infection, which could signal some other type of infection instead of an autoimmune disease. So all my results came out normal. I had no infections. My blood work came out normal. So it all indicated that this was a autoimmune disease. I felt so hopeless at that time. I think getting any type of diagnosis, even though you feel healthy, just hearing something from the doctor can kind of reassure your worst fears, and it can be really devastating at the time, especially if you're doing it alone like I was. I was trying not to worry anyone from my family, but then I ended up feeling very alone and scared myself, and this can sometimes be a mistake. I think the only reason for you to keep something only to yourself is if you have people around you that are less emotionally stable or strong than you are, because you need someone who will be grounded with you and who won't give up, basically. And if you tell a family member or a friend who might freak out and be more scared than you, then you might find yourself in a position where you have to be taking care of them instead of them helping you go through something. In that moment, you feel like you want an answer. You want to know why. I don't smoke, I don't drink, I eat pretty healthy, I exercise a lot. Like, why is this happening? What did I do wrong? What I try to do afterwards is I try to say, okay, what if I did smoke, and what if I did drink a lot and ate completely wrong and didn't exercise? Maybe this could be a lot worse. Also, because my symptoms were so mild, I felt like I almost didn't deserve to be sad. At that moment I felt like I was weak for being sad, and that I was weak for being scared, because I was like, well, I'm a healthy young woman. So I almost felt this invalidation of my own feelings. And this is something so terrible to do to yourself, because it doesn't matter how small your problem looks from the outside, you are allowed to feel scared and sad and frustrated and angry. And I think if you in that moment try to invalidate yourself and say you shouldn't feel scared, that's one of the worst things that you can do to yourself, because I was confusing weakness with feeling sad and feeling scared. Being scared, being sad does not make you a victim. What will make you a victim is not what you feel, it's what you do or what you don't do. I decided to research more and think, what can I do right now? It's okay to feel those things, but what am I going to do with this? And that's one of the reasons I actually wanted to put this video out there, so you can think of some things you can do. So what can I eat differently? What do I need to supplement with? What's the medication that I need to take? What are my options? So I started to do a lot of research like that. One thing though that I didn't find out from my doctor, that I had to find out later on the really hard way, is the exhaustion. I suddenly felt so tired, so exhausted all the time, and some days I could only get out of bed after 1 p.m. I just wanted to sleep. I felt like I was procrastinating. I couldn't get any work done, and I just had this feeling like I was procrastinating, like I was really harsh on myself, because I thought, why am I so lazy? Why can't I get anything done? Feeling bad, feeling tired, and then feeling bad for feeling tired, which would make me more anxious. And so it was just kind of a downward effect, and I really thought this was my fault. I thought it was because I wasn't motivated enough. It was only later on that I understood how autoimmune diseases take such a big hit in your brain. MS takes such a huge burden in your brain's capacity that you cannot operate at full capacity anymore. I was basically operating at like 20%. And I couldn't get any work done. I really couldn't. Feeling extremely tired is a very common symptom of multiple sclerosis that I don't think a lot of people talk about. And then I looked for a doctor here who helped me a lot with these symptoms. She works a lot on the metabolic health and nutrition. And then she basically explained to me that if you're dealing with an autoimmune disease, you need to have your metabolic health at 100%. You need to be optimizing your health as much as you can in order to help your body fight this disease the best way that it can. So I started supplementing with the right levels of iron, testosterone, vitamin D, vitamin B12, cortisol, like a bunch of other things that I needed. I didn't know how much I actually needed iron, for example, to make me feel less tired. So I'm still not at 100%, and I think with an autoimmune disease, you may never feel like 100% anymore, but 85% is very different from 20%, which is where I was at. So now I'm even able to record this video because I'm feeling much better and much stronger because of all the supplementation that I'm able to do, and also because I did a few changes in my diet, which I will talk about in a next video, but there are a couple of things that you can do to help your body, help yourself, basically. So this was so important for me because I got out of that mentality where I was blaming myself for thinking I don't have enough motivation or for thinking that I'm procrastinating, to understanding that I'm actually dealing with an autoimmune disease, which takes a big burden on my body, and that I need to help my body as much as I can, putting in the right nutrients inside and getting enough sleep. And so for now, I basically sleep about 9 hours a day, sometimes 10 hours depending on the day. Before, I thought I had to sleep 7 hours, 6 hours, and I just couldn't get through the day. So sometimes with an autoimmune disease, you also need a bit more sleep, and there are a couple of things that mess with MS. Overheating your body can make the symptoms worse. So if you take really hot showers or if you exercise so much that you overheat your body, this can actually make your symptoms worse. I've been surfing here, which has been very, very helpful because increase my happiness level, because surfing makes me so happy. And it's really important for you to find things that make you happy, because this will also help with your mood and it will definitely help with your autoimmune disease. And also when I surf, the water is kind of cold, so this nice cold water really helps get the numbness away from my body, because sometimes it does come back. So the ocean is perfect for that. And if you have the diagnosis, know that it is okay for you to feel whatever you're feeling. The only thing we're going to work on is not how we feel, but it is what we do with how we feel. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful week.